welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be doing things a little differently.
Oh.
Our source today isn't like a, research paper or article or anything like that. It's an email.
An email. Interesting.
Yeah, it's pretty intriguing. It's this casual, stream of consciousness message from a guy named Nico.
Okay.
To a developer named Cantor. And it's kind of like we're getting this peek into, Nico's completely unfiltered thoughts.
Wow. So, what's the goal? What are we hoping to find in this email?
Well, that's what makes this deep dive so interesting, right? We're going to try to uncover Nico's entrepreneurial vision for the future. What motivates him? What are his fears? And what kind of opportunities does he see in all of this?
Yeah, that makes sense. We'll be exploring not just what he says, but what it reveals about his entrepreneurial spirit.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So Nico starts by laying out his view of France's economic situation.
Okay.
And it's not exactly a rosy picture.
Got it.
He's talking about no growth, high debt, a heavy dependence on imports.
Yeah, and I think he's particularly worried about property ownership and savings in this environment. He points out that a good chunk of French people own property, but it's often through debt. And the high amount of savings people have in banks isn't really generating any returns. It's like he sees these traditional safety nets as fragile.
That's a really interesting point. He's questioning these systems that people rely on for their financial security. He even asks this desperate question in all caps, "On fait quoi dans tout ce merveille?" Which basically translates to, what do we do in all this mess?
Yeah, that's key. It's his frustration with the current economic situation, but also his desire to find solutions. He's not just complaining, right? He's searching for a way forward.
Totally. And that's where his perspective takes this really fascinating turn. Because despite all of this doom and gloom about the economy, Nico is surprisingly optimistic about the future.
Interesting. What makes him so optimistic?
Well, he's totally convinced that we're living in this time of gigantic opportunities, and these are fueled by societal and technological shifts. He even goes so far as to say, "On est dans un film, mon ami." We're living in a movie, my friend.
That's an interesting way to look at it, like it's all part of some exciting adventure.
Yeah, it's like, sure, things are a mess, but that just means there's more room for innovation and disruption.
And this is where his enthusiasm for AI comes in.
Right.
He specifically mentions GPT, Claude, and WebSim.
Yeah. Okay. So for our listeners who might not be super familiar with those tools, could you just give us a quick rundown of what they do and why Nico is so excited about them?
Sure. GPT, or Generative Pre-trained Transformer, is an AI that generates human-like text. You can use it to write articles, stories, even code. Claude is similar, but it focuses more on conversational AI, think chatbots and virtual assistants. And WebSim is a platform for creating realistic simulations of complex systems.
Okay, so what's the connection between these AI tools and his belief that we're in this time of gigantic opportunities?
He seems to think that these tools have almost reset the counters to zero for everyone. Imagine having access to these really powerful technologies regardless of your background or resources. It's like he sees AI as this great equalizer breaking down traditional barriers to entry in a lot of different industries.
Right. He actually says all barriers to entry have jumped. It's a pretty bold statement. Is he being a bit too optimistic?
Well, his enthusiasm is contagious, but it's important to remember that AI, while it offers a lot of potential, it's not a magic bullet. There are still challenges and limitations. Maybe we'll see how he plans to navigate those in the next part of his email.
That's a great point. We're just scratching the surface here, and there's so much more to this email. But before we move on, I want to get your take on something. This idea that AI has reset the counters. What could that mean for our listener?
That's a great question. And it's something I really want you all to think about as we go through this deep dive. If these traditional barriers are crumbling, what new possibilities are opening up for you?
Okay, so we've got Nico, who's clearly worried about the economic situation in France,
Right.
but also super excited about AI and all this potential.
Right.
But what does he actually want to do? What are his plans?
Well, that's where things get interesting. He just comes right out and says to Cantor, hey, let's team up on a new project.
Just like that, huh?
Yeah, he really values Cantor's skills,
Yeah.
He even says, I enjoy working with you,
I love that. That little smiley face is great. It gives us a better picture of his personality.
Yeah, for sure. And remember, he's not just looking for any project. He's got some criteria for this thing. It's got to be something they both enjoy, something that benefits others, and something profitable.
He's thinking big.
Yeah, he even brings up this Japanese concept, ikigai.
Okay, I have to admit, ikigai is new to me.
Yeah.
Can you break that down for me and our listeners?
Yeah, so it basically translates to a reason for being. It's like finding this real sense of purpose and fulfillment in your work, something that aligns with your passions and skills, but also you know what the world needs.
So like your joy, your talent, and having a positive impact on the world all coming together.
Yeah, exactly.
So Nico's not just looking to make money. He wants to create something meaningful and purposeful,
Yeah.
While also being, financially sustainable. It's got to have all three.
Yeah, it's like he wants passion, purpose, and profit.
I think that resonates with a lot of people, not just entrepreneurs either.
Yeah, it's not about chasing trends. It's about finding something that you really connect with.
Totally. And it seems like he sees this partnership with Cantor as like the key to achieving that Ikigai. He even mentions their last project, right?
Yeah, MetaQuant 4D.
Which, didn't exactly take off.
Right, he admits that it didn't really live up to their expectations.
But he doesn't seem like he's dwelling on the failure or anything.
Yeah.
He seems more focused on what he learned from it.
Exactly. And that's a valuable lesson for all of us, right? Like we all face setbacks, but it's how we respond to them that really matters.
Yeah. Embracing failure is a learning opportunity. It's great.
He even uses that experience to encourage Cantor to think bigger and bolder.
How so?
Well, he suggests that they push much harder on this new project. Like, let's use what we learned from our past mistakes to fuel our future success,
It's super motivating, honestly.
Right. He's not just waiting for something to happen, he's going after it. Going after something extraordinary.
That could benefit them and the world around them.
And then he goes back to that idea of ikigai, really urging Cantor to think about what they want to accomplish together.
Their legacy.
Yeah, it's a powerful call to action. It's this invitation to go on an adventure,
Yeah.
And they'll be fueled by this shared vision and this belief that they can make a real difference in the world.
So we've got these concerns about traditional economic systems, this excitement about the potential of AI to disrupt things, and then this deep need to find this Ikigai project.
Yeah.
This thing that benefits others but is also profitable.
It's really interesting how those all come together.
It's like this unique blend of realism and idealism, acknowledging the problems but not being limited by them.
Looking for ways to leverage technology and innovation to create a better future.
It's challenging and inspiring at the same time.
He's not just accepting the status quo, he's actively trying to change things.
Okay, but before we get lost in Nico's vision, let's bring it back to our listeners.
Good idea, because this is not just Nico's story.
Right.
It's about opportunity in a world that's changing so rapidly.
So we've got this email from Nico, and he's clearly worried about the economic situation in France, but also really excited about AI.
Right, and determined to find that project that aligns with his Ikigai.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So what does all of this mean for our listeners?
That's the big question, right? How can we make these ideas something our listeners can actually use in their own lives?
Right, because it's easy to get caught up in Nico's excitement.
Definitely.
But then we have to step back and ask ourselves, okay, what does this have to do with me?
Well, I think one of the big takeaways is that even when things are uncertain, even when there are economic problems, there's still room for opportunity.
Like Nico isn't ignoring those problems, he's just choosing to focus on solutions.
Exactly. It's a powerful mindset shift.
Instead of getting stuck on things you can't control, focus your energy on what you can create and influence.
And that leads us to the second takeaway, which is the power of technology,
Right.
Especially AI.
Right.
Nico sees it as a total game changer, and it can break down those traditional barriers.
We don't want to just blindly accept that statement that all barriers have jumped, though.
Of course not, but it's a good starting point.
To ask ourselves, what barriers do I face, and are there tools or technologies that can help me overcome them?
That's a great question for our listeners to think about, and it brings us to that third takeaway.
Ikigai.
Yes, finding real purpose and fulfillment in our work.
Aligning our passions with our skills and making a positive impact.
It's about finding that sweet spot where work doesn't feel like work.
I love that idea. And it's not just about career success either. It's about living a more meaningful life.
Exactly, and it doesn't matter what your job is or what your situation is. The search for Ikigai is for everyone.
This has been a really interesting deep dive. We started with just this simple email.
And we've talked about the economy, AI, personal fulfillment.
It's amazing where these conversations can take us.
It's not just about the news. It's about real people thinking about these same big questions.
So as you go about your day, think about what really stood out to you from Nico's email.
What resonated with you?
Maybe it's his optimism, maybe it's AI, or that search for Ikigai, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Let it inspire you to take some kind of action.
Because things are constantly changing, and the most important skill is being able to adapt to, learn to keep searching for that thing that gives your life meaning.
And you never know. Maybe one day your story will be the one we're discussing on the deep dive.
That's right.
Until then, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep diving deep.
Yeah.